Why does SpaceX want to go to Mars? Welcome back, Astroxians, to another episode of Astrox Radio. This is episode 8, and I'm glad to have all of you here. Today, we're going to be doing a lot. We're going to have a first headline topic of why SpaceX wants to go to Mars a lot. Then I'll be talking about my beloved beetle robot dog. After, I'll tell you about some recent rocket launches that has happened within the past 2 weeks since the last episode of Astrox Radio. And shortly after that, we'll be talking about upcoming rocket launches, some stuff with my Pico Calc handheld computer, and then we'll move on to section 2. In section 2, we'll have our second headline topic, which is about China breaking some record. And then we'll have some space news summarized from various websites. And then we'll have Astrox EOS design document, a document I've worked on for a really long time, and I want to read out some sections of it to give you a better understanding of what Astrox EOS is. And then we'll conclude the podcast. So, thank you for clicking on this podcast, and let's begin. Why does SpaceX want to go to Mars? Everyone wonders this, but I've come to an answer. So, SpaceX is aiming to colonize Mars to ensure the long-term survival of humanity by making it a multi-planetary species, serving as a safeguard against potential catastrophic events on Earth. Elon Musk believes that establishing a self-sustaining presence on another planet will help expand humans' consciousness and secure the future of civilization. So the objectives. The number one is ensuring human survival. SpaceX aims to colonize Mars to make humanity a multi-planetary species, as I said. Elon Musk believes this is essential for the long-term survival of the human race. He has stated that Earth faces potential catastrophic events, and establishing colony on Mars will be like a form of life insurance for humanity. Number 2 reason is expanding human presence. The goal is to create a self-sustaining colony on Mars. This will allow humans to live and thrive on another planet, ensuring that civilization can continue even if Earth becomes uninhabitable. Musk envisions a large-scale settlement that is self-governing and directly democratic. Then there's technological advancement. SpaceX's Mars colonization efforts are also focused on advancing space travel technology. The company is developing the Starship, which most people know, a fully reusable spacecraft designed to reduce the cost of reaching Mars. This technology is seen as crucial for transporting people and supplies to establish a colony. So, Elon Musk really wants to get to Mars by 2026. Chances of that happening? Probably never. No, not never, but it's not going to happen in 2026. There's like a 0.1% chance in my opinion. As you've seen Starship currently, they're now moving on to version 3 of the Starship, with the Raptor 3 engines, etc., and the larger body. But that version 3 flight test will probably be in early February next year, late February or late January. So that's already going to be just the test of that. There's probably going to be a version 4 or 5 before we get to Mars. And we were just still like deploying dummy Starlink satellites. They're nowhere near New Glenn from Blue Origin, which on the first flight that was successful other than landing, and the recentish second flight had successful launch, successful payload deployment for the Escapade Mars mission, and then it had a successful booster landing on the barge called Jacqueline. Those companies like Blue Origin are very ahead of SpaceX, but SpaceX Starship has received a lot more hype, which their mission is similar to Blue Origin's, but it's also really different. As Starship has 100+ ton capacity to low Earth orbit, whereas Blue Origin has around a 45-ton capacity. And these are in the tons. Think about that. 1 ton is like a baby elephant. Think about that. A baby elephant. 45 of them sending to space. That's just insane. We've reached a technological advancement era which is just way beyond our imagination. So, SpaceX wants to go to Mars, and the reason I specified before, which was including like human survival of the race and stuff like technological advancements, as there's going to be more space travel advancements just from getting to Mars, are all true. But Elon Musk is also going to make each passenger pay. Like for the first flight and second, maybe third, he won't make anyone pay because he will send the astronauts himself from like NASA astronauts and etc. But then for the later on flights, it won't be him paying for astronauts, it will be the astronauts paying him. Passengers who want to live and start a new life on a new colony, on a new planet, thousands of kilometers away, but I think more than 1 million kilometers away from Earth, which has like around between a 3 and 22 minute delay of communications. New life, new beginning, everything. So there's gonna be people like that. But I bet you there will be none of them in the first, second, third, maybe in fourth and fifth flight, because they want to see if the Mars colony idea is successful. And they don't also want to be the test pilots, really. They want the colony to be set up for them right there. But they do want to be early settlers. So out of all these like passenger things, that's another reason SpaceX wants to go there. Fame and money. They want a lot of money from that. So that's basically the headline topic summed up. But to summarize all that, SpaceX wants to go to Mars for mainly money, I would say, and fame, exploration, because humans always want exploration, which Elon Musk had said many times, which basically humans want to explore, and that's a basic instinct, which is what he said. And then there's technological advancements, as I said, survival of human race, and yeah. So now let's move on to Bitu robot stuff. So Bitu is a robot dog that I own by this company called Petoy. Petoy has made multiple robots, including robot cat, which is called Nibble, this robot Bitu, and then a Bitu X version, which is a stronger variant. This Bitu robot is currently 200 USD, but it's can be very modded by enthusiasts like me with robotics and tech, and it's amazing. So it's a DIY Arduino robot dog which can be assembled really quickly in around an hour or two. You can code it with block-based coding, Python, C, C++, etc. It's a palm-sized open-source quadruped robot dog, has amazing performance in a tiny package, and it includes a lot of things. So I want to code it in Python, and I send over the instructions to the robot using PySerial. My final goal with the Bitu robot is to have it act like an actual dog, like a real dog, and have a camera on it, and have the battery life last 6 to 8 hours, maybe even 12 if it's always sitting down most of the day, 8 hours if it's sitting down and standing up, and 6 hours if it's standing up a lot. But I want it like that. It interacts with me, has realistic movements and all that, and it responds to me. I want it like that. Currently it only would have an hour battery life. I can't really do anything, as if I try run some code on it, it kind of messes up, like the servers move around randomly. So I recently disassembled my Bitu robot and then reassembled it with all the parts I had from the disassembly, and now I'm soon going to use their software to fix up things, calibrate the servers, and then maybe next episode I'll have an update, maybe. So that's my end goal, and I hope I can get there soon. So I do recommend anyone who's listening and interested in robotics to get the Bitu robot dog, as it's I would say my favorite robotics kit I've had ever. Okay, now let's move on to recent rocket launches. On the day of upload of this podcast, there'll be Starlink Group 1512. Upcoming rocket launches. There'll be Starlink Group 1512. And then there'll be Starlink Group 6-82. Then there'll be Amazon Leo, so low Earth orbit, LA04, which is similar to Starlink, but from Amazon. And then Starlink Group 699, and then Starlink Group 15-13, Then there'll be a Galileo L14 launch from Ariane Space on Ariane 62. Then there'll be STP S-30, which will be from Rocket Lab on Electron, NS-37 on New Shepard, Starlink Group 688, and then Bluebird Block 2 on Flight 1 from ISRO on Launch Vehicle Mark III, so GSLV Mark III. And finally, there'll be EOS N1 and others launching on Thursday 25th December from ISRO on the PSLV DL. These launches are all subject to change, so they may not happen within the next 2 weeks, or they might. Now let's talk about recent rocket launches, which has happened in the previous 2 weeks since the last episode of Astrox Radio. Okay, on 1st December 2025, SpaceX launches Evening Falcon 9 rocket from Vandenberg Space Force Base. SpaceX launched its latest Falcon 9 rocket of the year from Vandenberg Space Force Base on Monday evening. Well, that was back then. The Starlink 15-10 mission added another 27 broadband internet satellites to the company's massive low Earth orbit constellation. By the end of November, it had launched more than 2,800 Starlink satellites this year alone. Ariane Space launches South Korean Earth observation satellite on Vega C flight. South Korea's latest Earth observation satellite was delivered into a sun-synchronous orbit Monday afternoon, so back then, followed a launch aboard a Vega C rocket by Ariane Space. The Korea Multi-Purpose Satellite 7, which is CompSat 7, mission launched from Europe's spaceport on the 35-meter tall rocket, which had zipped away from the pad under the power of a P-120C solid rocket motor. Sunset SpaceX launch had added 29 more Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit. And that was Starlink 6-95, which is SpaceX's 295th orbital launch from Space Launch Complex 40 and the 350th overall delivery. Then another SpaceX launches 28 Starlink satellites on Falcon 9 from Vandenberg Space Force Base. This was mission 11-25. And then another Starlink launch, and then SpaceX launches 3,000th Starlink satellite in 2025 on record-setting 30-second flight of a single Falcon 9 booster. And then SpaceX launches 160th Falcon 9 rocket of 2025. So that was a lot of SpaceX, Starlink. That's basically what's happened within the last 2 weeks of launches. Now, before we continue on to section 2, I would like to do some PicoCalc stuff, talk about some PicoCalc stuff. I've got Calcu Linux, which is a Linux distro specialized for the PicoCalc running on my PicoCalc. I don't have a Wi-Fi adapter yet for my Luckfox Lara, so to install packages, I'll have to load them onto my micro SD card and just use them like that. So for the code editing, I'll have to use Nano or VI. So that's my plan. I'm going to get a lot of packages using that, and I want to get a Wi-Fi adapter soon, at least before the end of the next maybe 2 months, as by then I want my kernel to be working for my operating system so that I can test some basic networking features in my kernel. Whereas there won't be much networking in the kernel, it's just a quick ping to check if network's working. There's not much else that's happened with the PicoCalc, so now I'd like to continue on with a break to section 2. So if you're still here listening, thank you. Before we continue on to section 2, because Astrox Radio is completely free of charge to you, can you support us by subscribing to the Astrox YouTube channel? And also, if you're listening on another platform, to follow the podcast. I really appreciate your support. And now, let's continue on to section 2. Okay, welcome back. So instead of wasting time, let's jump right in. We're going to go starting with our second headline topic of the day, which is China breaks record with 3 Long March rocket launches in a 19-hour stretch. China continues to make big advances in the final frontier. The nation just launched 3 Long March rockets in less than 19 hours, setting a new national mark for liftoff cadence. In addition, the trio pushed China's orbital launch tally for 2025 to 83, extending another record. The previous yearly high for the country, set last year, was 68. 83 is not a global record, because, however, SpaceX has launched 159 orbital missions in 2025 so far by itself, mainly because of Starlink. The flurry began Monday, December 8th at 5:11 p.m. EST, when a Long March 6A rocket lifted off from Tiangong Satellite Launch Center in northern China. That mission successfully sent a batch of broadband satellites to low Earth orbit for the Goerang National Network mega constellation. Then, at 10:41 p.m. EST on Monday, the mysterious Yaogan 47 spacecraft took flight atop a Long March 4B from Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in the Gobi Desert. Yaogan 47 is a classified satellite that will be used by the Chinese military. The triple header wrapped up on Tuesday at 10:08 a.m. EST with the launch of another classified satellite known as TJSW-22 on a Long March 3B from Xingshan Satellite Launch Center in western China. All 3 of these launches took place on Tuesday Beijing time, as noted by the Chinese Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, the state-owned entity that operates a Long March family of rockets. Quoted, "This was the 3rd successful launch of China's Long March rockets today, setting a new record of the 3 launches in one day," which CASC officials said in a statement on Tuesday, referring to the TJSW-22 liftoff. A total of 5 orbital launches have now occurred in the 24-hour stretch, beginning with Monday's Guang liftoff, and the other 2 were SpaceX's Falcon 9 missions. A Monday evening flight lofted a batch of the company's Starlink satellites, and the NROL-77 launch for the United States National Reconnaissance Office happened on Tuesday afternoon. That's not a 24-hour record, however, because between April 28th and 29th of this year, 6 different rockets launched towards orbit in the span of just 18 hours. A Long March 5B, 2 Falcon 9s, a ULA Atlas V, an Arianespace Vega C and Alpha, a vehicle built and operated by Texas-based company Firefly Space. All but Alpha was successful. Wow. So this is what Jared Isaacman was saying in his recent hearing, which was live streamed, about China, like the United States need to up their efforts in NASA to get on the moon, like land humans on the moon before China does. China is advancing very fast. Faster than the United States, actually. But the United States are ahead of China, but they're advancing at a slower rate than China is. China is probably advancing maybe 5 to 6 times faster than the United States right now, which means they, at the current rate, the United States will land on the moon after China does with human astronauts. China is just beating it out there. And overall, China launched 4 times in 4 days, which is boosting mega constellation and surveillance assets. China launched 4 missions in 4 days, accelerating its record-setting launch cadence while expanding its Guang low Earth orbit mega constellation and deploying new Yaogan reconnaissance assets, as I said. The period of intense launches is set to continue, with a Kinetica 1 solid rocket from CAS Space expected to launch late December 9th of Eastern Time, while a Long March 12 is scheduled for launch December 11th. So this was written before the podcast release. This is a news article from spacenews.com. The debut launch and landing attempt of the reusable Long March 12A could also take place within the next week or so. Follows a successful launch and failed landing of the Zhuque 3 rocket from land space on December 3rd. Well, that's the second headline topic done for this episode, so why don't we just move on to some more space news. Okay, now let me just get the headlines and the basis of all these different space news, and then I'll deep dive into a few of them. Rocket Lab tests new and reusable fairing for Neutron rocket. Apparently, Rocket Lab liked the game Hungry Hungry Hippos as much as I did when I was a kid. Well, most people did when they were a kid. Because a new fairing was created for the company's Neutron rocket is named just that. The Neutron rocket with Hungry Hungry Hippo fairing is scheduled for launch early next year, so stay tuned. NASA loses contact with Maven on Mars's far side. Something happened to the probe on the far side of the red planet. Comet SWAN, so SWAN, glows with pillars of creation. Comet C/2025 R2, also known as SWAN, was imaged in October as it crossed the galactic plane of the Milky Way. Comet 3I Atlas, caught on camera by Hubble. JUICE and the Hubble Space Telescope turned their gazes towards the interstellar visitor back in November. How to make a supermassive black hole? Just merge galaxies. This new approach can even reveal faint AGN that other identification methods will miss. JWST finds hot Jupiter with mysterious twin gas tails. Okay, now let's deep dive into Rocket Lab tests Hungry Hippo fairing for Neutron. Rocket Lab is getting ready to take a bigger bite out of the space launch market. The company recently completed final qualification tests on the fairing that will crown its newest launch vehicle, the partially reusable launch vehicle, which is known as Neutron, which is expected to fly for the first time early next year. SpaceX too has implemented its own recovery and refurbishment plans for Falcon 9 fairings, but the two halves of the shell protecting the rocket's payload on its way to orbit are still designed to split apart and fall back to Earth independently of each other, and of Falcon 9's first stage. Neutron's first stage, by contrast, will open its top like a giant mouth to spit out the vehicle's entire second stage and payload, and will then close the two halves back together before descending back through Earth's atmosphere to land and fly again. With the qualification tests now complete, Neutron's fairing section has been shipped to the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in Virginia, where it will be mated to the rocket ahead of the vehicle's debut launch. The company hails Neutron as the world's largest carbon composite launch vehicle, as it in the new rocket's fairing underwent extensive tests before it was finally deemed ready for flight. Once the fairing is incorporated with Neutron's first stage, Rocket Lab will perform a series of pre-launch tests, including a static hot fire of the 9 Archimedes engines that power the reusable booster. Neutron will stand 141 feet, which is 43 meters tall, with a 23 foot, which is 7 meters diameter, and is expected to deliver up to 13,000 kilograms of payload to low Earth orbit. Okay, the second bit of news we're going to deep dive into is the NASA loses contact with Maven on Mars's far side. Currently, NASA teams are working to restore contact with one of its most advanced interplanetary satellites. Maven, which stands for Mars Atmosphere and Volatile Evolution, is one of only 3 NASA missions currently in operation around Mars, and one of the 5 spacecraft serving as a communications relay for the space agency's rover missions on the Martian surface. During routine operations on December 6th, NASA's Deep Space Network lost communications with Maven as it orbited behind the planet. This type of loss of signal is anticipated by NASA's tracking systems, which usually re-establish connections with distant spacecraft after they are temporarily blocked by planetary bodies. As Maven was expected to emerge from Mars's far side, however, DSN failed to reacquire signal, according to the December 9th NASA update. Quoted, the spacecraft and operations team are investigating the anomaly to address the situation, which NASA wrote in the statement. Haven had launched on the ULA Atlas V rocket in November 2013, equipped with instruments to measure the evolution of Mars's atmosphere and interaction with solar winds. The orbiter had arrived 10 months later and has remained operational in Mars orbit for the last decade. Data from the Maven indicated a nominal trajectory and normal operating status for the spacecraft systems prior to its disappearance behind the red planet, which was according to NASA. Assuming the satellite's orbit remained unaffected but whatever caused the communications anomaly, NASA and DSN operators can continue attempts to ping the spacecraft along its predicted orbit as they work to determine a cause and subsequent solution. NASA's statement indicated more information would be shared on Maven's status as it becomes available. A lot has happened in space this week. Well, before I disappoint you, I won't do any Astrox OS design document stuff in this episode of the podcast because I have to sadly say that Astrox OS is done. I'm going to just work on CalcuLinux and apps for CalcuLinux and making CalcuLinux for only portable handheld computers and all that, as all the low-level stuff is already there, done for me. And I just want to work on that instead of making all these kernel. It just frustrates. It's hard to explain, guys. I'm really sorry, but it's just really frustrating and time-consuming. I feel like it's not a good use of my time and my mental energy. So I'm deciding to contribute to CalcuLinux, make packages like apps packages, new tools, make it focus on portable handheld computers, port it to more devices, etc. And make that perfect and make it more efficient. Always remember, I love efficiency on RAM and CPU. So we'll skip that part and we're going to talk a bit about CalcuLinux. From what I know about CalcuLinux, I'm pretty sure it's based on Calculinux, which is a distro of Linux, but it sounds similar to CalcuLinux. Okay, CalcuLinux currently includes a working LCD and keyboard drivers, basic system functionality, audio drivers, and A/B upgrade support with user data preservation, package management with OPKG, and network support of Wi-Fi and USB. The current hardware requirements, which are essential to running CalcuLinux, is first of all the PicoCalc device, and you get it from the Clockwork Pi store, the Luxvox Lyra SBC, the RK2506G2 based with 128 megabytes of DDR3L RAM, a micro SD card with minimum of 8 gigabytes but 16 plus gigabytes is recommended, and a USB-C cable which is data capable. Okay, for package management, CalcuLinux uses OPKG, which is Open Package Management, for installing, updating, and removing software packages. CalcuLinux packages are hosted on package feeds at opkg.calculinux.org. The system that you're using would automatically be configured to use the appropriate feed based on your installed version, which means you typically don't need to modify the feed configuration. The basic commands to use OPKG is OPKG update for updating package lists, OPKG install, and then package name for installing packages. Removing packages, OPKG remove and package name. Searching for packages is OPKG list, pipe symbol, grep, and then package, like search package name. And then viewing package information is OPKG info package name. Updating packages is OPKG update, OPKG upgrade, like two separate commands. And that's basically it that I'll briefly cover for CalcuLinux in this episode. So, before you all leave, as the podcast is about to conclude, can you all give me feedback? I'm a new podcaster. This is my 8th episode. I've been doing it for 16 weeks. Yeah, 16 weeks feels like a lot. 4 months. But come on. I'm not getting many views, and I want to know why. Is it that it's not very, I'm not sounding very enthusiastic? Is it too many stutters, or breaks? I don't know. Just please give me feedback through either my subreddit r/Astroxia_SRT, or a comment on this podcast on YouTube or on Spotify or Pocket Casts if you can comment, which I'm pretty sure you can't. Or yeah, just those two options, Reddit or YouTube. So if you like this podcast, please follow me wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe to me on YouTube, join my subreddit, and overall, enjoy your day.